Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you enjoyed my tour of Q Suites with the lovely wife and myself. I just wanted to bring you yet another entry, a special entry, because I think a lot of the times you guys get so used to seeing results and some of the terms get lost in the sauce. So join me for terms that you should know, travel edition. So let's just hop right into it. Now, oftentimes when you see creators such as myself vlog and film our travels, they're normally award travels. Some of them are cash paid tickets. But either way, there are a lot of terms and a lot of things that you may need to get used to, especially if you want to start traveling more, be it domestic or international. And these are some terms that I think will help you out. Hopefully, you can use this as a reference. Keep this as, an ace in a hole, and hopefully, this can help you out. So, without further ado, the very first term I'm going to touch on is amuse-bouche. Now, why it sounds a little hoity-toity, but the fact is that once you start flying internationally, especially in higher classes, business and first class particularly, you will start hearing that more. And basically, all an amuse-bouche is like a personal appetizer. It's like a personal hors d'oeuvre. So you will get many different types from many different carriers, ranging from Cathay Pacific to Singapore Air to Emirates. I specifically got a scallop when I was on Q Suites with my wife. Emirates has their own different type. So just think of it as like a personal starter. It's almost like when they give you like warm nuts and stuff like that, just only a little more flair to it. So that is an amuse-bouche. It's French for something with the mouth. I think amusement of the mouth or to make the mouth happy, but don't quote me on that. Our next term is business class. Now, this may sound basic to some, but there is a delineation between business class and the other classes in the plane, between business and first, between business and premium economy, between business and economy. Obviously. Now, business class is what it sounds like. It's for business travelers, people who travel frequently, who want a quiet place to rest and or work. And you would be very amused to find out that the business class as we know it, which is predominantly lay flat seats that people can sleep in, was actually pioneered by British Airways in the year 2000. So business class seats as we know it are not terribly old. They're barely old enough to drink, and they give you free alcohol and such and what have you. But that is business class. So a lot of the times people will actually confuse business class for international first class, and they are not the same. Normally, when you have international business class, they will be much better than even American domestic first class. And you have some American carriers who do have real true to form business class in their domestic planes, like American Airlines flagship is definitely a true to form business class that is domestic. And from what I've heard, it's supposed to be something that everyone should try on a domestic route. But that is what business class is. It's a step below international first class, a couple of steps above economy, and definitely a step above premium economy. In business class, it is common to get an amuse-bouche, get Dine on Demand. Um, Obviously, alcohol and drinks and refreshments are complimentary, and you tend to get customized service. Now, this term is for my redemption people because a lot of the times they'll be paying more attention to this than people who pay for cash tickets. And this term is carrier imposed fees, meaning that even if you do an award redemption, carrier imposed fees are fees imposed, well, by the carrier. There are fees and costs that they use to recoup costs that they outlay, such as fuel, such as regulatory fees, such as taxes imposed by their local governments, which they then pass on to the consumer. Now, for the most part, 9 times out of 10, these carrier imposed fees they want them in cash. This is something that they have to charge you. They will be wholly separate from any points currency that you may use to redeem a ticket. So always be prepared, even though there are some carriers, and I will point out Air Canada as one of them, that will actually let you use your points to cover extra fees that normally would come with your ticket as well. But you have a delicate balance game there is an opportunity cost there, but that is definitely something for you to figure out according to your personal situation. Next up, we have a common term that most people see and don't really know what it means, and that's code share. If you've ever been in an airport and you've caught a flight anywhere, I don't care who the carrier is. Let's take Delta for instance. I've transited through Atlanta Airport a lot. So you will see a lot of Delta flights that will say operated by Aeromexico or operated by Virgin. Virgin's not even an American carrier. Neither is Aeromexico, so why does it say that? What a code share is an agreement between two airlines that they will both sell seats on the same plane under their own separate flight numbers. So if you buy a Delta ticket on DL1234, you may also be able to buy said ticket on Air France AF 1234. Two separate flight numbers, but it's all on the same plane. They do this so that just in case they have multiple legs, they can still get you on planes that may be different carriers in the same alliance, and in some cases with non-alliance carriers or even opposing alliance carriers. I've personally experienced this when I bought a Delta ticket and they actually use a code share with a one world partner, Alaska Airlines. So it is not uncommon for them to do that. Code shares are very common all across the aerospace industry. So just so you know, just in case you see another carrier's name on your flight, it's nothing for you to worry about. Just understand that all the people on that plane may not have bought that Delta ticket for that Delta flight from Delta. Next, we have Dine on Demand. As I mentioned earlier, normally you will get Dine on Demand at minimum in business class. Also in first class, is much more common in first class, but Dine on Demand is exactly what it sounds like. You dine whenever you want. And some carriers take it a step further. It's not just about dining whenever you want. It's also dining on whatever you want. So if you have a full menu and you have breakfast items, dinner items, small bites, it doesn't matter. You can order anything at any time. Normally, this is a perk for higher class of customers. So once you get your pre-departure beverage, as soon as it is safe to do so, you are not beholden to the schedule that economy and premium economy are held to. So they have to wait. Dinner will come at this time. If you're asleep, you miss it. If you're awake, good for you. With business class and other elevated classes, you figure out when's a good time for you to eat. You may want to eat before you land because you got something to do. You may want to eat so you can get to sleep ASAP. You might be a night owl like me and just want to sample things all through the night. But that is the whole purpose of and definition of Dine on Demand. Another specific term we have is fare basis codes or fare class codes. These play a very vital role in redemption flights and paid flights as well, because not all tickets are created equal. There are some airlines that use letters. I'll use Delta. Different fare classes, M class, L class. They are not, huge on the ticket and, shining in your face, but they delineate different fare classes because on some classes you may get more points while spending the same amount of money as someone else. So that would be the difference between an A class and a B class. Once again, with Delta, my wife has the Delta Platinum Sky Miles card, which comes with a companion ticket. Now, with that companion ticket, it's a buy one, get one ticket. So you buy one ticket, get one just for the cost of taxes, but there are only certain fare classes that are eligible. So even if you have the most convenient flight ever, if it does not fall in the proper fare class, you cannot use it with that card. Something even more familiar for my international travelers. I'm sure you've seen, like for instance, on Emirates, you have business flex or business saver or first flex, or you know what I mean. They have these categories, and all of them have different things attached to them. For once again, I'll use Emirates. If you get a business class ticket with points, that is a different fare class than a cash paid ticket, meaning that business points redemptions, you don't get the chauffeur service that you get with paid redemptions. That is just one glaring difference that you need to understand. But that is what a fare basis is. It's basically a fare class indicator, so they know exactly how many points you should get, what kind of reward you would get. This is one of the reasons you don't commonly get points on award flights. Not saying it's impossible, it happens around, but for the most part, you normally don't get rewarded for using a reward. The airlines are kind of savvy that way. But this is something you should also look for is your fare class. And definitely check out with your preferred carriers what your fare classes entitle you to. Now here's one of my favorites, Fifth Freedom routes. I love Fifth Freedom routes. What a Fifth Freedom route is an airline route that a national carrier flies between two countries that does not include their home country. For example, a Fifth Freedom route for United, which is based in the US, would be from Tokyo to Manila. That's a Fifth Freedom route. It would be Emirates using a route from Miami to Bogota, Colombia. That is yet another Fifth Freedom route. That is all a Fifth Freedom route is. Outside of the United States, for the most part, most airlines are controlled by the government. The government has a controlling interest and they are national, what are called national carriers, at least the ones that you've heard of, not like discount ones like Ryanair and so on and so forth. But for the most part, they are what are called national carriers. So they have hub and spoke operations where you will normally touch that home country at some point in your journey whenever you choose to fly these routes internationally. One of the famous ones is Emirates. Another famous one that is good for passing you through their country is British Airways, which has huge carrier imposed fees. But those are national carriers. If you want to get around some of the fees, Fifth Freedom routes are actually very valuable. And if you find a great deal on them, they can be extremely cost effective and you get to enjoy a lot of the perks of, some of these, high flying carriers that go above and beyond that we've all seen the videos for. Now we have a gate agent. Now, gate agents are different from ticketing agents. Ticketing agents, you meet them when you first come into the airport. They normally help you with checking of your bags and so on and so forth. But the gate agents are the ones right before the jetway. Now, they have access to the flight plans. They communicate with the actual flight crew. They tend to be closely related with them. And in some cases, especially one I will point out is Delta Airlines. Once again, I fly Delta a lot. In their clubs, in the Delta Sky Miles clubs, a lot of the people who are helping at the front desk with the club are gate agents. So they can actually look up your flights. They can help you with upgrades. They can help you with seat moves. They can give you all sorts of information that you won't get in a Centurion Lounge or a non-airline affiliated club. Now, I cannot speak to American Airlines or United as I have actually never enjoyed the services of either one of those clubs. But Delta does have gate agents working inside the club and it makes it very, very, very convenient. But that is your gate agent. Your gate agents are the ones who are going to give you announcements in real time on the plane, whether it's delayed, when the crew is going to get there, if there are any payments for people who are willing to take bumps, and so on and so forth. So let's make sure that we know who our gate agents are as opposed to our ticketing agents, as opposed to our customer service agents. They all perform very different tasks. You can't have a book of terms to know without herringbone. What a herringbone is a seat arrangement. A lot of the times when people book flights, it is very important to know where you're going to be seated, how you're going to be seated, especially if you fly business and or first class internationally or even domestically. Herringbone seating arrangement is very important. And basically all a herringbone means is that you have parallel seating. So you see how my hands are set right here? So you have one seat here, one seat here, one seat here, one seat. That's all a herringbone is. This allows for mainly what's called a one-to-one configuration where they can fit a lot of these very large business seats in. They can maximize the space and everyone still gets aisle access. So that's where you'll normally see herringbone as opposed to like a figure eight, like how Q Suites uses, where they will actually give you a certain type of seat, which is going to be our next term. So that is all herringbone is. So if you see a business class or if you see a domestic first class with herringbone, you tend to have more wiggle room and for the most part, everyone pretty much is going to get aisle access. And continuing with seating, we have Honeymoon Seats. Now, what this is with services like Q Suites or Emirates Business Class on A380, there are quite a few carriers who do this. They will have business classes, and you will see on the seat maps where two seats will have a noticeable gap like this, and then the next row, the seats will be like this. Then the next row, and they will alternate that way. Just like on the window seats, some will be off the side of the plane, and others will be right up against the plane, giving you a little more privacy. What honeymoon seats are two business class seats that are put together in a manner that if you simply lower the divider, you can have much more access to your neighbor without any of the razzle dazzle that they normally put, that they encase those huge business seats in, to get in the way. When my wife and I flew Q Suites, we were in a honeymoon seat where it was a simple divider. It was just one basic board that they put down, they put a cushion over it, and we were able to share a bed, and the only thing separated was our feet. So that is what a honeymoon seat is. That is what they're commonly referred to. So when you look at some of your seat maps, especially if you are flying with a plus one, the closer the seats are in the middle of the plane, those are going to be your honeymoon seats. And I would highly suggest, gentlemen, if you're traveling with your significant other, just get the honeymoon seat. I mean, just pray to God there's open window seat. Film it later. Get the honeymoon seat. Save yourself some grief. Here's one of my favorite things about flying international, and that is international first class, which is definitely not like US domestic first class. International first class is in a realm all on its own, and with carriers like Singapore Suites, with other entries like Emirates first class on both the A380, the game changer on the Boeing 777. You have Etihad's the Residence. Some of these international first class suites and or seats are just out of this world. From what I've been told, Japan Airlines has an amazing first class product as well. Now, these are going to differ from business class. They're going to differ from every other class because, number one, these seats will have an insane amount of room. And I'm talking the space to at least fit two, three, in some cases, four economy seats. But this space is all for you. You will get the top of the line eats and drinks. There are places that serve alcohol that is hundreds or even over $1,000 a bottle, $2,000 a bottle, and is all gratis because this is the most money you are going to pay to fly on a plane. In some cases, you will have your own living room. You will have your own shower stall. There are places where you will have a shower that you will share with others. There are all sorts of different configurations for first class, and a lot of the airlines are very competitive, but this is the top. Outside of flying the plane, I don't even think the pilots get to be this comfortable. You're not going to get a better seat on the bird. That is international first class. And as an addition, understand that a lot of these upper classes like business and international first normally include a very robust ground service. So really the first class treatment starts well before you get on the plane. Now here's one we should all be familiar with, and that's a layover. And basically what a layover is, and this is the accepted common rule, is that a layover is anytime you have between two flights to get from your destination, point A to point B, where you have two flights and there's just time in between. So if you take a flight at 12 p.m. and you get to a secondary location at 4, and your next flight is at 5 to get you to your final destination, that 1 hour is a layover. And they're very common, especially since a lot of airlines have gone to hub and spoke to save fuel and minimize direct flights for people who aren't flying out of their hubs. That's all a layover is. Now, layovers are commonly less than 24 hours. In other words, if you have a layover, it normally does not make sense to leave the airport or go very far away from it because your flight could be early. You know what I mean? That is what a layover is, and that's the purpose that it serves. Now, here's a term you don't hear often, but it is very useful, especially with planning rewards flights or flights that are hard to get. And that is an open jaw flight, meaning when you fly from one location, you will fly to another location. So you will fly from point A to point B. And instead of flying from point B to get back to point A, you will actually fly from another point, a third point, a point C to get to point A. So you may fly from JFK to Paris, run around, Eiffel Tower it up, but you might decide I'm going to fly back from England. So you fly from London back to JFK. That is an open jaw. So there's one point and there are 2 points that you will travel to, thereby looking like an open set of jaws. That's all it is. Open jaw can actually include multiple different locations, but the reason I am bringing this up is that open jaw is normally what a lot of people use, especially with redemptions, because of the availability. And the availability tends to skew more towards one ways as opposed to round trips. So that is something that a lot of people like myself consider. Next, we have pitch. Pitch is extremely important. If you've ever heard this term and didn't understand what it meant, what pitch is the space from one part of one seat to the same part in the seat in front of it. So normally pitch is measured in inches. So depending on how tall you are, if you are a taller traveler such as myself, pitch is very important. I like pitch over 35 inches. That helps me. That tells me I'm going to be more comfortable. Up to 37 inches. I like that. The higher the pitch, the more space you have between you and the person in front of you, because that could help, especially if you're like me and have the worst luck possible. For some reason, people love to just recline their seat into my very soul. So pitch is something you're going to want to take into account, especially if you have surgery, if you have stiff joints. Those things matter. That is what pitch is, space between one seat and another seat, but you got to use the same frame of reference. That is pitch. Now we have a positioning flight. When you do redemptions like I do, I am notorious for doing point redemptions because let's just face it, I am not independently wealthy, and when I fly, sometimes I may not be able to fly from my home airport. So that might mean taking a flight to a major hub like Atlanta or JFK or Dallas Fort Worth or Houston Airport in order to catch a redemption flight. But that flight, that first one, that first cheap flight, which is normally fairly close to your home airport, that is to get you in position to take your flight to wherever it is that you're going. Positioning flights also work the other way around. When I recently came back from Doha, Qatar, we actually flew into Boston and not to Florida where I live, so I had to reposition back to Florida. That is what a positioning flight is. It either gets you in position to leave or it takes you from position when you've landed and brings you home. You guys may hear this term, and just in case you didn't know what it was, I am here to explain it for you, and that is purser. Normally, flight attendant crews work in teams and they will have what's called a purser. Basically, all a purser is the supervisor for that team in that class. So normally there's a business class purser, there's an economy purser, there's a first class purser. So there is a team of flight attendants there to take care of everybody, but they all answer to one person that's normally the manager. So that is your flight purser. If you have problems, you should always try to reach the purser. If your initial flight attendant cannot help you, it's best to talk to them, and normally they are very, very, very helpful. And I had a wonderful purser on my Q Suites flight from Miami to Qatar, and they are just amazing. Now, I think it's apt to define this because it is special. There have been videos made about it and the lack thereof, and that is Q Suites. Q Suites is a product offered by Qatar Airways, and the reason it is special is because they offer multiple business class products. Most carriers normally have a business class. You either fly this class, that's what you're getting, that's it. But with Qatar Airways, they actually have Q Suites, which is the first class of business class. Then they also have Qatar Business Class, which is very much so not Q Suites. So this is something that needs to be really encapsulated, especially if you're doing a reward hunt or even trying to buy a cash ticket, to ensure that you have Q Suites. It is not offered on all of their planes. So one 787 might have Q Suites, whereas the other one has Qatar business class. And it's even got a term being Qatar because in some cases you will buy a Q Suite ticket only to then have an equipment change and you are now on a non-Q Suites flight. So you have to be very cognizant of that. But Q Suites is definitely different from Qatar business class. You will have a suite, you will have a door, you will have privacy. It's normally in a figure eight configuration as opposed to a herringbone. So that is Q Suites. Please be very aware of that. Q Suites is on a lot of people's bucket list. It was on mine, and you definitely do not want to get cheated out of that opportunity. Now we're coming to the end, and this term is a stopover. If it sounds familiar, it's because it should, because we covered layover earlier. What a stopover is, a long layover. So normally stopovers are over 24 hours. They give you enough time where you can leave the airport, you can explore around, and just like I said before, the common convention is that stopovers are over 24 hours. There are some carriers that will allow you to actually plug stopovers into your trip. So let's say you leave on a Monday and you are trying to get from, let's use New York. Let's say you're trying to get to Singapore. And let's say you schedule 2 stopovers. So you fly to Frankfurt and you have a 2-day stopover there. You will then pick up your flight and you can go to, let's say, Dubai, have a day stopover there, and from Dubai, go straight to Singapore. And all of this can be rolled into one ticket. Airlines, they have found the usefulness in helping people plan globetrotting vacations such as these. And the best part about it is sometimes you can actually plug stopovers into reward redemptions. So you're already paying a deeply discounted price because you're using points currencies as opposed to your hard-earned cash. And for extra points, you can explore different cities. I mean, as long as your passport's accepted, you should be good to go. Air Canada is actually good for this, for you to plug in some stopovers on your trips. So that is what a stopover is. It is a super long layover. The next term is transit. For people who are not accustomed to international travel, they don't use some of the terms that we use here. So transit, you will hear you are transiting through a country. So when you transit through a country, you're not actually entering the country, and there's different protocols and different things that you have to do. Once again, when I was coming back from Dubai, I flew Qatar through Doha back to Boston. So when I got to Doha, I never actually entered the country of Qatar. I transited through the airport. So we had to go to a whole separate section. We had to go through separate queues in order to have our bags checked separately. And in some cases, it's a less stringent check because you won't be remaining in the country, but they still will check you in order for you to remain in the airport and catch your next flight. So, like, you have airports that are, much easier to transit through than others, and there are others that are total nightmares. Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris is notorious for being ridiculously difficult to transit through because they have so many different gates. They have bus routed gates, they have gates that are attached to the airport, they have gates that have no jet bridge, they have some that do have a jet bridge. So whenever you hear the word transit or you are transiting through an airport, you may have to go through, some hoops that you might not be accustomed to, but I would just calmly follow the staff's direction. And in addition to that, when in doubt, they have information desks all over the place. Just stop and ask, unless you're in a rush for the plane. I mean, then just ask faster. And the final term, very common one, but like I said, you never know, is a visa. A lot of times when you travel, especially internationally, as you can see here, I've mixed some domestic and some international. Obviously, domestically, you don't need a visa because you're in the same country. But internationally, you need a visa. That is a reason to enter a country. They will stamp your passport with your visa. That gives you the legal ability to remain in a country for X amount of time. Some visas are free, depending on your passport and where you are going and the relationship those two countries have. Your visa will be of no cost. If you have an American passport and you head to Dubai, When you head to the United Arab Emirates, your visa is of no cost. So once you get there, you present the proper paperwork. They'll look at you, they'll be very nice to you, they'll give you a stamp. Boom, you have what's called a tourist visa. There are different types of visa. Obviously, with the proliferation of reality TV, people now know what the K1 visa is. That's a marriage visa. Most of us will be traveling what's called a tourism visa. That'll give you 30 to 60 days in a country, depending. Every one of them is different, but 30 to 60 days, and then you got to get out. So that is your visa, because when you leave the US, it is always good to have your passport with you so that people know you are legally in a country and you can take it to the US Embassy if you encounter any issues or problems. But that's what a visa is, the right to be in a country. Not all are free, some you have to pay for. When I recently went to Cairo, Egypt, I had to pay for a visa. And a lot of countries are now giving you what are called e-visas, so you can prepay for them on the internet. And then once you are paid and they have your pertinent information and they're approved, you actually pass through as if it's not paid. So where people have to whip out their credit card, they just stamp you because you've already given them the money. Qatar is one that is not free. It was free as of October of 2024, but now if you have a U.S. Passport, when you go through Qatar, you got to pay. It's like $23 US, give or take. It's less than 25 bucks. I think the Egyptian visas were more. I think they were 30 something a piece for me and my wife. But either way, that's all a visa is. So I hope you enjoyed this. I like to have this reference, just for people who might be trying to get into the game, who might be, trying to ramp up their travel. This way you go in armed with a little bit of knowledge. And I am an avid points redeemer, but I also pay cash for flights, especially domestic flights. I've only paid cash for one business class flight, and it was well worth every single penny. But I just wanted you to have these terms because some of them, honestly, I'd been flying for years and I had no idea what they meant until I sat down on a computer and looked them up. So hopefully I have been able to help you with what little knowledge I can pass forward. And what I can do is I can make edits and I can add on additional terms as well as time would permit. But there's no other reason for me to keep you, and I'm going to point at some videos I think you would like. Hopefully you enjoy these, and I'll catch you later.